guys to kind of follow along with. And the title of this is Doubling Up. August 28th feels like a day that I'm going to remember forever, just because of the implications it had for all of us here at the church. So I think 50 years from now, I'm always going to be thinking, August 28th, that's something special happened on that day. So that was the day that we went to our two-service model, and that date was picked previously in the springtime, and then it was like a mad dash trying to get there, everybody getting ready and trying to make sure that their ministries were up and running, and at least in my ministry, trying to make sure that we may not be 100%, but at least enough to function and make sure that nobody died. So the church essentially doubled the amount of things that we would be doing for quite some time. So do any of you guys have examples of ways that your ministries got doubled, or the work that you had to do got doubled? Yes.
I have now 2 sets of Bible study classes.
2 sets of Bible study classes. Okay.
I now have 2 sets of worship slides to prepare every week.
Okay.
That's one example.
One example. Okay. Anybody else?
I have 2 sets of volunteers for counseling, and when there's baptisms thrown into that, then it gets even more complicated, because some of them are with the baptisms and some of them are counselors, and it all has to get
So
untangled.
complicated is the operative word there.
Yes.
Okay, so it got a little busy. So we've established that there's a little more running around and trying to get things done ever since August 28th hit for us. So our problem is that our staff hasn't been doubled, and we haven't quite yet gotten our volunteer base doubled, and our volunteers and our staff is what makes everything run. And in order for us to keep things running and meet our church's demands, we're going to have to bring that up. So for example, one of my ministries, we need to establish more hosts and facilitators for neighborhood ministry. And what other volunteer areas do you guys need filled? Anybody?
I need volunteers to take people to the 2 new Sunday school hours.
For your 2 sets of hours? Okay. Anybody else have volunteer issues?
I think we need to have more choir members doing,
Okay.
and maybe arrive on time
And arrive on time. That would be helpful.
and be awake.
Awake and on time. Now we're asking for a little much.
We now have 2 visitor receptions, so that requires double volunteers to greet the first-time visitors and pastor's reception.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got a couple more things that we're going to need. So a few steps that I would suggest that we take in order to help the situation that we have is to make sure that we continue to vision cast. We don't want to underestimate the importance of overemphasizing why so much has changed. People are still not going to quite understand what it is that's happened, and even though we've been talking about it for months and years, they are still thinking, what is going on? We have to emphasize our mission statement, which is to win, train, and send, and not let people forget what we do now has to go through that funnel, so just helping them understand that. We also have to not be afraid to tell people that we're hurting for volunteers. I think a lot of times it, as a self-defense mechanism, we try to put a Band-Aid on things and make it look like we're doing okay. But I think one of the main things we want to do is to let people know we need your help, and this is something that's really important to help our ministry function. And we want to make sure that that knowledge trickles down the ladder from our main important leaders that are there by our side as staff members to the people who maybe help out once or twice, but just so that everybody knows that this is a need that we have, so that the word can spread. We also want to be able to set an example and be visible about asking people to help us and to volunteer and trying to get or recruit people to help us, because if we set that example, then our leaders are going to do that as well, and they're going to follow our example, so that it will have a broader spectrum of getting people to sign up. We also want to keep it at the forefront of our leaders' minds. It's important for them to realize how much of a priority it is to us, so that they can take it upon themselves to realize that priority and try to move on with that as well. We want to make sure that our leaders don't get tunnel vision in the ministry by limping along, because I think a lot of times we focus so much on our particular ministry that we don't realize that there are other ministries that are hurting, and possibly people that we may meet in the hallways could be helpful to someone else and not just helpful to our own ministry. We want to know who our target audience is. We can't target the same old people who have been helping us because they're still doing 2 and 3 jobs, like it or not. Even if our goal may be to get people to be only doing 1 job at a time, because of the fact that we still don't have our volunteer base up, they are still doing 2 and 3 jobs. So we don't want to add to that or subtract people from other people's areas. So we're working against the fact that people most likely volunteer who already participate in other things, and they may not think that they're taking on too much, but in actuality we have to realize that for them sometimes. We have to remember to target new people and make sure that we're not trying to I guess leave them alone and let them be and let them get settled. Just let them know, hey, you want to be a part of our community, this is what we do and this is how we operate, and we want you to be a part of that. And also, don't forget the baby boomers. We have this entire generation that is willing and ready, and actually statistics say that as the baby boomer generation reaches the post-retirement years, an increased number of older adults are likely to engage in volunteering. So as you look at the people that are in our church, you want to realize that sure, they may have reached retirement age, but they're not retiring from getting things done and being a part of our community in the church. Some of the reasons that older generations might back out of volunteering are the lack of priority and problems with the programming and the administration. So we want to make sure that on the flip side, we make sure that we do keep them as a priority, and we let them know that this is a part of our priority. And we also want to make sure that we have on our end the administrative side under control, so they don't feel like they want to back out because of that. And also, we don't want to forget the teenagers. One of the main reasons why teenagers don't get involved in volunteering is simply because they don't know how to get involved by themselves and because they haven't been asked. So really all it takes is just an open invitation to say, hey, we need your help. Could you come on this Sunday or come on this day? And they'd be more than willing to. It just takes a matter of an invitation. So both of those reasons for teenagers can be counteracted by us. So it's really a huge part on our part to make sure that these kids can get involved. And we want to make sure that we follow with 1 Timothy 4:12, not to look down on them because they're young. And I think in our church we have a perfect example of how many kids we have that are so talented and so willing, and we just want to make sure that we use them. And also keep a priority of going through the discipleship process. Statistics show that people who are engaged in learning about the discipleship process are more likely to volunteer and to stay involved. So with that, in our Southern Baptist denomination, the highest number of people willing to volunteer in our church is within that denomination. So other churches, whether they be Catholic or Lutheran, for some reason the Southern Baptist denomination has one of the highest rates of people who are really ready to get involved. So we need to take advantage of that. And that's particularly true for people who attend services. And so if we just realize that the people who attend our services at church are actually more likely to get involved, it'll probably give us a little more unction to get people to get involved. So if we don't begin to work toward implementing these plans, we'll continue to move forward, but we'll move forward at a disadvantage, and that's not something that we want to do. So I guess my encouragement for everybody is to take action by being vocal to your peers and your fellow leaders. Let them know that this is something that we're all working towards and trying to get taken care of. You want to not act like you're in a vacuum. So ask people what their ministry needs are. Ask your fellow leaders, ask your fellow staff members, so that if there's ever a time where you see someone who can help volunteer for them, you can get them connected, because we don't want to act like our ministry is the only one that's important. We want to also tell other people what our needs are, so it's kind of like a reciprocal give and take. And probably the most important action step is to make sure that we take our blinders off. Ever since August 28th, we kind of we're doing this marathon run, and at this point, we're not running anymore, we're just kind of jogging through our journey. So it's important to take those blinders off. We got to our goal of making this model launch, and now it's just a matter of getting through that journey at a pace where everybody can be successful at the same time. So it's just a matter of remembering to spur our people on and continue the journey that we've begun.